Good afternoon, good evening, good very, very, very early in the morning if you are in Asia, Japan, and China more specifically, where, of course, there has been a lot of tennis going on in the last few days, trying to get our heads wrapped around tennis tournaments that are taking place in different parts of the world, but also at different stages on both the WTA and ATP side is a little bit confusing, and maybe also confusing for our audience is the length of both Damien and my beards. I don't know if this is any relation to the confusion and the time zones and Asia and all sorts of other things going on. I think, Damien, you're slightly longer than mine, just looking at it right now, but we're also both in agreement that we're sort of 2 or 3 days away from the absolute limit where we're going to end up tearing skin off our face when we actually do end up shaving, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to a party on Sunday. I don't think I will really have time or will to do it before then. But I think when I'm back from it, it's probably when I'm gonna, I'll actually commit the act of shaving this. But so far, I'm not really showing up that much in public spaces. Only read the shop, and otherwise I just watch tennis all day because, as you
And
said, we have different regions and.
talking tennis, Damien, is a public space. It's maybe not, we're not
Yeah,
exposed to the world exactly, but we
I
could.
don't see these people, and this makes it different. Like I'm not really afraid of how I look here.
Got it. Vanch is clean shaven as ever. Vanch, how are you doing?
You're also muted as
You're on
ever.
mute at the moment, Vanch. I don't know if that's me or.
Um, it
Let me see
tells
if
me
I.
that we cannot
There we go.
unmute him.
Now
Okay.
I hear you. Perfect.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So it looks like the audio is working. Yeah, I'm still getting used to the whole time difference and the Asian swing and the women's schedule being so different from the men's, where the men's is like Wednesdays to Tuesday and women's is like your ordinary Monday through Sunday.
Nerlan is feeling left out here. He's the only one who's feels like he should be here, but isn't. Nerlan, one day we'll get you one, but maybe we'll just need to try Twitter Spaces first, just to see how that works out. Anyway, there has been, of course, a lot of tennis going on in various parts of Asia and Astana, and I think Astana probably counts as Asia, does it? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, we might touch on Astana, but I do want to begin with Iga, particularly as I have the two hosts and co-founders of the Iga and Carlos show. Both, of course, were in action today, but probably the biggest headline. Is it the biggest headline, Vonch, since the US Open, her loss today, or am I getting a bit carried away by that?
Mm, I think you're probably right. Actually, I can't really think of much really off the top of my head. I mean, maybe Sakkari winning Guadalajara probably is a bigger storyline than Eagle. I would say so at this point. Um, but Eagle losing yesterday was a little bit of a surprise, but I guess then not really if you watched her play her first round against Santama. That was you could already see that she was definitely a little bit rusty, definitely struggling with her timing from the baseline, her returns, and just kind of spraying and playing. But when she finished that match and ended up winning, I still thought, okay, we're going to see a bit of a level raise. She's particularly owned Kudermetova in the past for head to head, I think, going in, and Kudermetova had only won 4 games in their last 3 matches. So you would have thought that this would have been, you know, more or less Iga getting back on track and starting to put some more wins on the board. But it turned out that it really was not the case. I mean, she made like 50 unforced errors. There was kind of Damien and I touched on this as well in our previous episode that when Swiatek is really struggling and the opponent is connecting and able to implement the right tactics, which is rush Iga and take control of the entire baseline tempo, then there's not much of a plan B that Swiatek really has right now, other than just kind of hit the ball harder and just she essentially went into kind of a Sabalenka type mode, and I didn't feel like she gave herself enough margin and didn't make enough returns as well, which was maybe more surprising because Swiatek generally breaks serve more often than anyone on the WTA, and there was just And Kudermetova, to her credit, is one of the more underrated servers, I would say, on the WTA because she does have pretty good placement. Her ball toss. Even that being said, I still felt like Iga didn't do a good job of. There were so many times in matches when in the match when she was missing neutral rally balls, and I didn't feel like she implemented a kind of the Coco Gauff strategy of just looping a lot of forehands back into play and just making Kudermetova feel the pressure a bit, and so that she would be the first to miss rather than the other way around. And so I felt like she was just beating herself up a lot. And I just didn't really see a whole lot of emotion either, like positive emotion when she was getting ahead and when she did have the momentum in the second set. The third set was a little strange because the one game that she got broken, she double faulted 3 times. And that's just very unusual. So it was just overall a pretty bad day, I would say. Just maybe probably her worst match of the season. Would you agree with that, Damien?
Go on, Damien.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be up there. I think the one against Hontama, even though she won it, is also up there. So, like, the whole week, she was just, just struggling to find her timing and tactically just blasting the ball, whatever really happens. You know, we were, as you mentioned, we were talking about it on the most recent episode that we did. And basically, we were saying that at some point, probably something has to change, some sort of, just ideas, variety, plan B, however you want to call it. But yeah, coming out against Ostapenko at the US Open, of course, and just trying to hit harder than her, that did not work out. And then Swiatek comes to Tokyo and does pretty much the same against a different opponent. Okay. But like, yeah, for me, the serve that you mentioned of Kudermetova, that's like the main thing that she does well, I think, which is like play quick points on her serve. Not necessarily the serve itself, but I mean, the serve is also a big part, but like also the how she plays after her serve, the short rallies, the 1-2 punches. And yeah, definitely I was a bit stunned a few times when Swiatek just demolished her like this. Because as you said, 4 games in the last 3 meetings. The only one that was like remotely close was in 2020. And this year they've already played twice, and both times Kudermetova just didn't have a shot at all. So I was even wondering whether to set up an alarm clock for this match. I think it started at like 6:30 a.m. for me or something like that. I wasn't really sure if it makes sense. I just assumed that maybe because of how Swiatek played in the first round against Hontama, that it's not going to be as easy as in the past. But also it's a very different matchup. Against Hontama, she had all the control that she wanted. And here she actually had a rival who can fight back, but in the past did not. But in the end, I actually, had that alarm clock and I watched it from start to finish. Definitely after the second set, you would think that Swiatek will have it, but suddenly, I mean, she loses a few games on return very easily. And there's some sort of uncertainty, and yeah, there's never any intention of changing anything up. Basically, there's really nothing that she did in terms of, I don't know, maybe return position. There were a few games in the third set where she was not making any returns. Basically, I think there was like a long patch of whatever 15 points on Kudermetova's serve where maybe she made like 3 or 4 returns. And yet there was, even though we were coming to the end of the match, there were a couple games only that Kudermetova had to hold. I never really saw any change in the game plan, and it felt weird to me. I wasn't really expecting that, because I thought after the US Open, this is surely what they are going to focus on, in order to just maybe have some sort of a different idea, plan B, when it's not working out. This time it definitely wasn't. She was just ball bashing a la, I don't know, Yelena Ostapenko. Like, honestly, watching this match, I felt like I was watching Yelena Ostapenko. And sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. Obviously, that's not the most reliable strategy either. Keen says that Kudermetova at the US Open was dreadful. Yeah, generally going into this event, she was quite dreadful. So I think she did well still to forget about the past losses to Swiatek, come out for a completely new match against an opponent who was way off her best on the day. And yeah, she managed to get that win, which is surely very important for her mentally. John, you are muted.
I'm off mute now. I know Vanch is having 1 or 2 issues hearing you, Damien, but I heard you loud and clear. So Vanch is going to log out and then log back in. On this sort of plan B, though, I mean, it hasn't been a problem for 2 years, 3 years, 18 months, whatever time frame you wish to select regarding her. Let's go for 18 months since reaching number one. It hasn't been a thing for 18 months. So why is it a thing now?
I got distracted when I was reading Nurlan's comment actually, and like the variety, in my opinion, does not have to be variety in a traditional sense. Like it does not have to be, I don't know, a drop shot, a slice, or whatever. I think it just sort of needs to be maybe a different approach where you're not just trying to overpower your opponent. You just sort of try to rally. Maybe you are one of the fastest players on tour as well. You are one of the best slider on tour defensively, 100%. So yeah, maybe just not try to overpower the opponent every time, if it's especially when it's not clicking, when you don't have the baseline timing that you usually have, which you didn't at all in Tokyo. And yeah, serving as well, of course. That would be quite key. And her drop shot used to be really good, although primarily on clay. But I think that's also something that could be invested in the future as well. So that's basically what I meant. And John, what was your question?
Just basically how, I mean, it's kind of similar. You and I'll tell you how you addressed it, and then I'll repeat the question as well. You kind of did address it in that it's not just a plan B. It's also just don't resort to just whacking the ball like she did today. You know, the drop shot is a drop shot is not a plan B in the same way that a serve and volley is a plan B, or attack the net is a plan B, but it is an option. And that was basically my question in a way, was that why is now the lack of a plan B, if that is the case, an issue, whereas she's managed to do pretty well for 18 months potentially?
That's a good question. Yeah, and I guess it's just that the rivals stepped up, right? I mean, in 2022 there was no one who could really tackle her when she was playing like that, and right now they can. So at some point you need to adapt, and so far we haven't really seen that adjustment. I guess at the beginning of the year we've seen that improvement in her serve. It's not fully fleshed out, but there were some steps undertaken there for sure. But yeah, this event especially, it just wasn't great at all.
Keen, that's a really good question, by the way, in the live chat. Damien and I sort of touched on that topic, I guess, in a show we did about Wimbledon 10 months ago, and the Wimbledon points ban and the ramifications of that. We certainly covered a lot about the ramifications of the war in Ukraine in that episode. And I'm probably more than likely to touch on it again. But right now I am going to focus on the tennis on the court rather than side issues such as that, as significant as though it is. Vanch, I spoke to Iga, funny enough, just after her win over Kudermetova in Madrid. It was like about 1 o'clock in the morning. It was one of those matches where she was a bit unhappy about having to play so late. And she mentioned it, I think, at some point as well, shortly afterwards. But she was very kind enough to speak to the media for a few minutes. Now, that night, of course, was very different in that it was one of the matches that Damien touched upon where she just crushed Kudermetova. And she even very politely did basically say, look, her movement on clay is not great. Maybe she even said something a bit stronger than that. I mean, but very as politely as she possibly could. I think she won 2-1. I'm not sure if that's the exact score, but it was a very comfortable win anyway, with just a couple of games dropped. So what about Kudermetova? Was she pulling up trees? Was she doing an amazing job, would you say, today?
Well, I think she definitely realized that Swiatek doesn't have her A game, and she just had to stay strong in the rallies. I like Damien was saying, she was doing a good job on the first shot after the serve, but also just getting a lot of free points in the third set, which really helped her out. She was serving incredibly well in the third set. That was maybe one of her best serving performances, if you like, because she was just getting a lot of unreturned serves. So that definitely helped her confidence. I think she has a pretty great backhand when she steps into it, and when she has time, and she deals with the shorter balls a little bit better. And she was able to also rush Iga and put her on the back foot a few times, especially in the first set. And I feel like Swiatek definitely gave Kudermetova a lot of chances in this match, like to just feel that confident and just. I think also in Madrid, she played those two really long matches against Kasatkina and Pegula, which definitely took something out of her, even before stepping on that court. And this time, I think it's a different kind of an Iga where the rivals have stepped up, and you're going to see more players kind of in that 5 through 20 range that Iga would have dominated in the past. maybe just believe a lot more now because the rest of the she was 7-0 against Goff, and then I'm not saying Kudermetova is going to go on and do what Goff did, but it's a mental belief kind of thing in the locker room where I think more players in the top 20 certainly believe that they can beat her, especially on a hard court where at least on the clay, like she can just kind of rely on her athleticism maybe a bit more. She's just more comfortable defending overall, but I just feel like that's one thing we have to critique Iga for. She didn't really utilize that. That's one of her biggest strengths, and she's top 2 mover on the WTA tour and best sliding backhand and best just overall athleticism skills. So she needed to utilize that a bit better and make Kudermetova earn it more. I felt like.
And she used to do that a bit, right? Like even in, I don't know, the end of 2022, there were maybe, let's say, Garcia at the WTA finals. Like that's a match she just won by making her play a lot of balls. So it's not impossible. She wasn't trying to overpower Garcia there. But I don't know. Maybe she just doesn't feel like Kudermetova is that much of a threat, which kind of she isn't. But, well, definitely didn't work out here.
I'm just thinking now, just quickly writing down the last tournament I think Iga won was actually in front of your eyes, Damien, in Warsaw, if I'm right.
Number 15, yes.
Yeah. So now that's not a huge amount of time ago for most professional tennis players. In fact, I don't think probably Sabalenka's won one in that period of time, for example. But you then throw in Wimbledon, I guess, where we might not expect her to do much anyway. In fact, she didn't win the previous tournament. I think she pulled out sick, didn't she, in the tournament in Germany, in the build-up to Wimbledon. And then so we go back to the French Open. So since the French Open, it's been mixed, I guess, at best, and maybe even slightly disappointing. And more specifically, if we look at when you mentioned that Goff situation, I think it was you, Vonch, that just mentioned the you're not predicting a Goff scenario. I then remembered, okay, she lost to Goff in Cincinnati. I think it was Pegula in Canada, and it was Ostapenko, of course. So we've kind of got 4 very different players with 4 very different narratives when it comes up against Iga, those defeats. So we've got Pegula, who has been known, particularly on a fast hard court, to have Iga's number, as she did at the beginning of the year in Australia in the United Cup, and then obviously more recently in Canada, although I'm not sure how quick those courts are in Canada, but you catch my drift. Then it becomes Goff, and it's Goff like, oh, maybe she's turning the tide. I know it's only one match, but we all went into the US Open thinking, yeah, okay, maybe Goff is going to have a good run here. And of course, she goes on to win the tournament. Ostapenko repeats the trick rather than breaking the trend like Goff and Kudermetova. So 4 very different results. My question in the title, Vonch, was, is it time to panic? Well, I guess it's not quite panic stations, but there is cause for concern regarding Iga, right, Vonch?
Yeah, I think it's just cause for concern that the rest of the field has stepped up, and so now she just has to respond, just adapt. And I think some of those changes that we're talking about in introducing the variety and improving the serve. I mean, I was there in Cincinnati and was already kind of working rigorously every day, practicing, trying to improve those things. I just don't think she has the confidence right now to execute it in matches and big moments. So maybe it's something hopefully we'll see with the off season. Maybe she's just really spent after a really long year. I mean, that could also be it. Just a lot of matches, long season. It might be some of it might be down to that because she was just more flat than I've ever seen her. Plus, it could also just be this could be a blessing in disguise in that she has more time to get to Beijing, practice. She does have an early round already because she did not get a bye. They only gave performance buys, and unlike here where there were 2 buys at least to the top 2 seeds. So, and it was a while since she last played at the U.S. Open because she lost at the end of the first week or start of the second week. But so could also just be rustiness. But I do think I don't think it's time to panic because I still think her base level is still pretty high. That she can still maybe even contend for year number 1 depending on how Sabalenka does. Although that's it's probably more likely going to go in Sabalenka's favor this time. But
I mean, I guess one of the sort of 3 or 4 big ones on the women's tour. You know, Rybakina, Sabalenka, Swiatek, and we can throw Goff in there. And I guess to some extent, in terms of being a big name right now, having won the US Open, one of those will probably go on to win the WTA finals, and that will be, in a way, although that won't necessarily dictate who ends year end number one, it may well dictate who's kind of had the best year, actually, in a way. If you win one slam and then the WTA finals, you'll probably have one over your rivals. And therefore, if she was to go on to win that, then that would very much put a nice end to her year. So, yeah, probably a little bit early to press the panic button. Let's talk about the other three semi-finalists, Damien. We will come to somebody who Keen is suggesting you should be supporting shortly. But let's touch on Maria Sakkari. I think she has to be next on the list of topics, because I didn't see... If I didn't see her winning in Mexico, I actually probably had even less optimism regarding her backing it up as she has done. And very impressively, it was one of the few matches that I was able to tune into against Garcia today. I'm just kind of surprised by it. Am I stupid for being surprised, or should I have expected her to win her first 1,000 and also back it up, particularly regarding the field, I guess, in Mexico, but possibly because of the field, I thought, and also the traveling, all the rest of it, and knowing how these things happen. We've seen, even this year, I've seen people win 1,000s and then go out early at the next tournament. Never mind if it's on a different continent. But here she is again, and she's in another semi-final. And in a way, given the players that she'll have to go through, this could be even more impressive than winning that 1,000 in Mexico.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it would be. It's just 4 matches compared to 5, but still, I know people like to throw around this stat that her average, the average ranking of her opponents in Guadalajara was 103. I think it's a little misleading. You know, there were a few really lower down players that were really lower down, but at the same time, Georgie, Garcia, these are definitely competitors who should be good at altitude. Should be threats, and yet she just completely dismantled them, as she does every time to Camila Giorgi, apparently, and as she's also doing, well, not every time, but at least twice in the last 2 weeks against Caroline Garcia. I think just getting Dolhide in the final in the Guadalajara, in the Guadalajara final, I think that's something that she needed to do, especially with how much she's been talking about this, and the mental block of having so many lost semifinals, finals, the fact that she only had one WTA title still. What was it, Casablanca, Rabat, one of these, right?
Mm-hmm.
or Rabat, I think 2019.
Yeah,
one of these ones in Morocco. I remember just before she played Dolhide in the Guadalajara final, I told this to my dad that Sakkari is playing against Dolhide, so it's not really interesting, but she's playing for just her second WTA title. And it goes what? She only has one? And he's a more casual tennis fan, but that I think that really shows what sort of how we and even casual tennis fans thought of Sakkari. And it's not really surprising, because, well, she has a crazy consecutive top 10 weeks streak, right? She's been in the top 100 for 100 weeks or something like that. And it's in the top 10, of course, not top 100. In the top 10 for 100 weeks. And yet just having one title, clearly a big mental obstacle for her. And just having cleared that, apparently she's been able to use that confidence to go to Tokyo and keep doing the same. On the stream that I did for Davidovich Fokina Zhu, I remember Nurlan picked Pegula to win Tokyo. I picked Sakkari. I'm still hopeful. She's still in the event. She crashed Garcia again. I think it's let's be honest, it's kind of likely that the winner of Sakkari Pegula goes on to take the title. The conditions should suit them both. Pegula especially, maybe, but Sakkari, with so much confidence. And as you said, it could go both ways, but clearly she has been able to use it in a good way.
Yeah, I think I've got something to add as well to that win that she had in Mexico, is that I didn't really look. I think the problem is that people were looking at it through the prism of it being 1,000 points, whereas I think if you just look at it as a title, and it could be significant in a way, very different reasons. But when Rafa won that 250 in Melbourne just before the Australian Open, I thought, okay, that's that's something to build on. And then, he hadn't played much in the previous sort of 8-9 months, and just very different reasons. But I didn't, from my point of view as a tennis fan, I don't really care if it's a 250 or 500 or 1,000. You could stick 250 points on that, and it would still be us going, well, it's a significant week for Maria Sakkari. It's been a good one. And when you throw in the fact that there were some top 20 players in the draw, that's not her fault that they get knocked out. And in a way, playing a top 20 player out of form, i.e. a Caroline Garcia, or playing a Dola Hyder, or however you say her name, in the final in Mexico, and the pressure with that in Guadalajara, would have been significant. So I'm not as down on it as some people are, and you could just see how happy she was. And I'm really pleased that she has backed up. I mean, Damien, you've tipped her for the title. I see where Nerlan is coming from, though, with Pegula. I probably am just on her side, if you like, in terms of likelihood of winning. But how do you see that match turning? Oh, actually, no, before you address that question, Vonch, I actually want to say, was there anything you saw in San Diego that suggested that Maria Sakkari was going to go on and win 9 matches in a row? I think she's on right now.
Actually, it's funny that you asked that, because with the benefit of hindsight, I do remember the first press conference that I was at, pre-tournament, when she'd already played, and she said, her goal was just to be happy. And at first I was like, I mean, it's easy to say, but then I noticed in San Diego, she didn't have her team with her. She was all by herself. And she just was kind of using that as a way to get back on the match court. Obviously, she was in tears. In some ways, that was her rock bottom, losing in the first round to Masarova at the US Open. Just because, she said that she got a lot of support from fellow players and just reaching out to her, because she thought she was going to end her season and just take a break, because she just didn't feel like, her mental health was in a good place to compete. So from that standpoint, I think, and I actually wasn't too discouraged by her loss to Emma Navarro in the quarterfinal, because I felt like, she won the second set 6-love, and she played a pretty good match overall. She just didn't start the third set tiebreak in the right way, but I felt like kind of indicated that, like, okay, like she's back, like she can contend for this. And when I saw the field next week and I saw that a bunch of the names were pulling out, I still felt like, okay, like, if she can put herself in the semis and finals again, maybe there's a chance this time. And I was just impressed by how she was able to roll Caroline Garcia in that semi, because, it's not like Garcia, that was one of her better weeks of the season, actually. Like, she could have lost before that, certainly. And it was like kind of a close match for like 6 games, and then Sakkari just like ran away with it. And then obviously, winning the semifinal was big, but then I think also the final, to be honest, I don't think this is like some huge thing that now all of a sudden Sakkari is going to go on and win slams or something. It's more like a Rublev situation in Monte Carlo, where like things did like kind of break right for her, and maybe she can do it again. Maybe she can win another 1,000. Maybe she even backs it up this week and wins all those matches against Pegula. It's like 3-3 since the start of 2022, and they keep splitting. Like they played in Doha, and that was the semis of 500. They played this in Washington, and then Sakkari gets her back, and if she can get 2 in a row, I think she leads that head-to-head 5-3 overall. And so like they've always had pretty close matches, and Sakkari has a good record, I think, against most top 10 players in general. So it's more about that clearing that semi-final final hurdle, no matter who it was, because we saw her 1 year ago. She lost to Mayar Sharif in Parma. So it wasn't like I was confident that she was going to win the final against Doha, but at the same time, I was like, I'm not really sure. Like, she still has to pass the test, because, there was a slight worry in that first set when she lost those 3 games in a row after being 4-2 up, and then
in Guadalajara,
happy for her, and it's good to see it kind of continue, because obviously years of like perseverance and resilience.
By the way, guys, I didn't want to address this comment, which is basically just it's Friday night, you should drink a beer in Polish. But anyway, the question that I wanted to address was the question I wanted to address was which Greek is more likely to win a slam, Steph or Maria, which is quite interesting. And Keen says that it's not close and that Maria has a much bigger chance. And one thing that I have to sort of question, would you have said the same before Guadalajara?
My opinion hasn't changed much. I'm still going to go Steph amongst the two, but I don't
Yeah,
have a lot of
Okay.
confidence either, but go on, Vanch.
don't have a lot of confidence in either. I'm probably still gonna say Steph too, just because like it's been 2 years since like Sakkari has been past the fourth round of the slam, so I kind of need to see her do win before I can be like, okay, maybe it's possible. But
You know on which team I am.
Yeah, I mean, I do know, but it's more because of Steph than Maria, right?
Yeah, I think so. And also because of the fact that it's simply more unpredictable on the women's side. You've got seven matches, but best of three, and the WTA 1000s are, sort of slams in a
Yeah.
way. So yeah, probably because of that. And also, Guadalajara probably did sort of change my mind there. Like, definitely improved Maria's chances of getting a title at any level, basically.
I mean, I like that. What Vonch said, actually, something I suggested to Nick and Miles earlier this week was just how if she can just be a regular winner, winning titles like Andre Rublev. That was the example Vonch said, and it's exactly the same example I gave to those guys on Sunday night, I think it was. If she just can start winning matches and titles and having slam runs, and if it doesn't, win a medal for Greece, for example, at the Olympics, if it doesn't go beyond that, I think it'll just about be fine, and she's enjoying her tennis along the way, then that would be amazing too, because I don't think she's enjoyed lots of the last couple of years. Even when she was winning tennis matches and getting to semi-finals, I think she found those semi-final defeats in 2021 really tough. Vonch, there are two other players, or one other player I think we probably haven't touched on, or I guess we kind of did, but Pegula is obviously on the other side of the net. Any thoughts on her and her chances and basically her end of year, if you like?
well, I mean, she also hasn't won a 500 double title, so I guess this would be like a first for her if she were able to get past Sakkari. But I mean, like Sakkari Pegula match is going to be interesting. I don't really know who's going to win. It feels very kind of even 50-50. It's kind of a coin flip because it seems like all their matches pretty much go the distance, with the exception of the Guadalajara final last year. So if she does win that, you would think she's the favorite. Um, and then Pavlyuchenkova is kind of an interesting wrinkle in the whole thing, because I mean, she's she got to the quarters of the French, but like she hasn't done that much of note since. So this is a pretty good week for her. But oh, I'm just reading the comments. It's funny. But
We love
but
the
I
good
mean, yeah.
left field comments from Nerland.
I definitely have a crush on her game, but in general, I don't know.
Yeah, Damien, if she was in a bar in Bonn, I think you'd have a chat, and I think you'd, yeah, okay.
That says a lot. That says a lot, because me to have a chat with a girl.
Yeah, but I could facilitate that quite easily. Talk about I'll quickly do a Google to find out where exactly in China she's from, and then I'll mention that region is your favorite for food, and then then I'll just watch and sit back and see how it pans out. Anyway, we just like
one thing on Pegula, just because
watch.
you did ask. I
Sorry.
was gonna mention the indoor swing, because I felt like I guess this would tell us like how good Pegula really is indoors, because like 3 of her 4 losses this year in the slams, like when the roof closed, she was really not comfortable in those conditions. And last year she did go 0-3, although she was pretty exhausted. So I wonder this time around, with conditions maybe being more ideal, like how she performs in the year. And I think the year-end finals could be pretty big for her, just maybe more than other players psychologically. If she wins that title, maybe that gives her a lift to go on and get to a semi for the first time.
Pavlyuchenkova is an all or nothing player in the last sort of 7 months, 6 months probably. In that there was, when she sort of first rejoined the tour after about a year, I think, off the tour, I think she was losing some matches quite badly. She then got a win. I think I met her actually just after her first win on the tour for a year or so. And actually I said something to her, which she just like I said, I think I called her run in Paris in 2021, a surprise or something like that to the final. And she said it wasn't a surprise to me, and I was like, okay, sorry. But she does surprise me. I mean, this tournament, but more specifically, I didn't see that French Open run coming this year in 2023 to the quarters. I think it was. She was going toe to toe with in New York. She was going toe to toe with
Svitolina?
yes,
it
it
was
was Alina.
Alina.
That could have gone either way, and it was a really good match. And that level, again, probably surprised me a little bit on a hard court in particular. But here we are. She's in the semi-final, and she has a chance against Kudermetova, a big chance, I would suggest, to make the final two. Any final comments on this tournament in Tokyo, Damien? Any storylines that I've missed?
Oh no, probably not. I mean, we've been talking about this for 37 minutes or something like that. So I think we can go to the other ones.
Yeah.
Apparently, I also have a crush on Shevchenko. So
Yeah. I mean, just
can't wait to start talking about him. Although he lost, so we're probably not gonna be talking about him.
Over in Ningbo, which I believe, I know Ons Jabeur is in the final because I saw parts of her match today against Podoroska. In fact, I say parts, the third set, basically. I saw against Podoroska where they were on serve, but Jabeur had a break point at the beginning of the third set. I think the commentator that I can't remember who it was, it might have been Barry Cowan, but apologies if it wasn't, posited the question as who's the favorite at this point, and I thought it's still clearly Jabeur. And Jabeur got an early break point, didn't take it. But then then Podoroska played a couple of very loose service games to end up losing 6-2. So Jabeur is into the final, though perhaps another storyline from Jabeur is the fact that, again, there did seem to be one or two physical issues. I think there was a few limps around the court at certain points. So fingers crossed she can remain healthy for her final against Schneider. Vanch, any thoughts on Jabeur or this tournament in Ningbo?
What I would say is that it just looks better watching her on court just visually. I feel like she's compared to Guadalajara, where she was struggling physically against Travisan. Probably should have put that match away in two, but then, when things got very physical, it was kind of just tough to watch her struggle like that because you associate good vibes and happiness generally with Ons. And since Wimbledon, it hasn't really been that way. She was sick all throughout the US Open. Probably pretty impressive, actually, that she even got to the fourth round. Considering she could have lost any of those first three rounds those were going, and then same with the match that I saw in Cincy. So, this could be a positive week. If she wins the title, I will say that she struggled a little bit of late against lefties. So I'm interested to see this final against Schneider because, she last lost Trevisan, then she lost to Vondrousova 3 times. She's lost to Haddad Maya. So these are all kind of lefties who make her create pace on her backhand. So I kind of wonder if, tactically, we might see some of those issues reappear again. But, hopefully, I think this is a good opportunity for her to win her first hardcourt title. So that would be something that, is positive. Obviously, she did get to the US Open final, but generally we think of her more as a natural surface player. So I guess it would also help her chances of winning. This would also help her chances of securing that 8th spot because now Sakkari is getting awfully close in that race. So, I honestly thought she was going to take a break this week and wasn't even going to play it, but she kind of entered last minute into Ningbo. So, yeah, we'll be good, but I would say only if she wins the title because anything less would kind of seem,
Yeah. Particularly probably as she's playing Schneider in the final. No disrespect to her, but Ons should be the favourite there. Let's switch over to the ATP side of things. This is kind of a sort of a midweek roundup, believe it or not, although it's a Friday. They are now just entering the round of 16. I'm going to begin, Damien, by talking about Alexander Zverev, because actually since ATP Weekly occurred, which I believe was on Monday in the wake of the Laver Cup, there was a particular tournament that Zverev was involved in, and he ended up going on to lift that title. And then today, he was involved in a far more dramatic match than I anticipated against Schwartzman. Schwartzman was up a break, I think, in the first set. He ended up pegging him back to a tiebreak, and then you're thinking, okay, well, Zverev has got this now, and we'll go on. But actually, Schwartzman managed to snag or snare the tiebreak, and actually managed to make that a very interesting match. Of course, Zverev as well, Damien, is in a sort of race, if you like, to get to Turin, of which he's probably the favourite right now.
Yeah, I think he has a wonderful chance of getting to Turin. I have to say that the last couple of weeks, he's been struggling but winning mostly. I don't know if that's impressive or not. You could definitely look at it both ways. Another tough match against, not against Dimitrov. I guess it was a straight setter, but it was still pretty tough. But otherwise, he's just dropping sets left and right to Kecmanovic, Kotov, Schwartzman, and Safiullin. So I still think that he's getting some very valuable points. I remember someone on Twitter, maybe it was Morgado, saying after he won Chengdu that Zverev is like now very significantly into the into the Turin sort of qualification zone, which isn't really true. Like he's currently about 260 points ahead of Fritz. But if he continues going in Beijing, that would be huge. I'm not sure he will because like the past couple of weeks, I don't think he's playing as well as he was in Cincinnati and the U.S. Open. He's gonna have to face Davidovich Fokina, which sounds like a very spicy matchup right now, especially with having remembering the most recent meeting that they had, which was Davidovich Fokina just giving him just 3 games. And then, of course, Zverev goes on to reach the semis in Cincinnati and also reach the quarterfinals at the US Open. But I definitely have said a few times on these shows in the past couple of months that I do think that he is very likely to get to Turin. Definitely more likely than Fritz. Rune will see about the injuries and physical stuff. But for now, I think Zverev would improve the quality of the Turin field unless someone else at the end of the year, I don't know, Taylor Fritz, Casper Ruud massively steps up. But for now, I would say he definitely deserves to be in there.
Vonch, I'm not sure if you use the word doldrums in California. Do you know that word, doldrums, to be in the doldrums? Okay, just checking. I'm pretty familiar that we're pretty much speaking the same language, but you never know. Words like doldrums, I don't know if it's a British English word or not. The reason why I'm using that word is because you mentioned Holger Rune there, Damien, and I looked at the match between Holger Rune and Felix today as a match of 2 players in the doldrums, but for very different reasons and for very different lengths of time. For me, Felix has really been in the doldrums since the ATP finals last year. Rune, I would say, since Rome. For me, the final in Rome would have been a disappointment for him. I think he had his chances against Medvedev, and he'd had a great run to get to that final, skittling Casper Ruud and before that Djokovic. And really, since then, I know he had a decent Wimbledon. That's the last time he won a match, by the way. But still, the defeat to Carlos was probably a lot more comfortable than he would have liked. And yet, they had this match today, and I thought it would be close. And I don't know if it was really in the end. And now it's Felix who's continuing to be in the doldrums. And Rune, I think there's reasons for optimism for Rune. If he can stay healthy, we're now in his zone, if you like, as we come towards the European indoor season.
Yeah, there was a lot going on with Rune in those 5 matches that he lost. He just didn't look right to me at all in any of them.
Right.
Maybe he was struggling with a big back problem, and they were just trying to take painkillers and just play through it. But it was very obvious when he lost to Carballes Baena, and even in Cincy when he was losing those matches. I think he lost to Giron in Canada, and McDonald didn't even finish against McDonald in Cincy. So I knew something was definitely going on there. I was surprised that he was able to turn that around and just get some kind of a cortisone injection in his back and just play within 1 week. But honestly, he looked pretty healthy, like in that match against Felix, and he looked, more or less kind of back to where he was. He said he's been struggling with it since the clay season. He did still kind of he managed to get to the quarters of Roland Garros and quarters of Wimbledon. So I don't really think it's like been a disappointing year. Like I actually think it's fairly up to, like I think in the beginning of the year I thought he would finish somewhere around 8 or 9, like in the world, because I didn't think it was going to be reasonable to just go, win everything after Paris last year. So But like his draw this week, I mean, he's playing Dimitrov again, which is like the last kind of convincing win that he had. So that would be kind of interesting because Dimitrov himself came back from 2-6-1-5 down yesterday.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of crazy, right, Vanch?
Yeah.
I mean, that's Damien. I don't know if you can think of many examples that were that similar to the Dimitrov turnaround. I mean, I guess
immediately I thought of
it's a
Sabalenka against Kanepi
Go on,
last year.
Vanch.
I thought of Sabalenka against Kanepi at the U.S. Open second
Yeah.
round last year. That's immediately what came to my mind. But that
She also faced
transcends
match points. She also faced match points as well, and had a net cord go in her favor, I think, on one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's another what if. If she loses that match, does she go on and win the Australian Open?
I agree. Does she have the year that she's had this year? I agree. I look at that tournament, but even more specifically that match as a big turning point because she gets the semi-finals. You know, she was close to beating Iga. Anyway, Damien, any thoughts on the Dimitrov crazy comeback?
Because of that, I sort of feel like Rune is probably going to be a favorite against him. Dimitrov was led back into the match by McDonald, which has not happened for the first time this year for sure. Especially the semi that he had against France Rundolo, right, in Eastbourne. That was maybe even an even worse example in a way because it wasn't grass, and it's easier to just drive the match towards the end. But I thought Rune was definitely very impressive today and looked healthy for a change, which is basically all that matters right now with him, it seems.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch on something, but now I don't remember. Oh, actually, about Felix. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but he has not signed up for either of Basel or Vienna, which is super weird. I mean, he literally won Basel last year, and after Shanghai, he wants to play the ATP 500 in Tokyo. But like, provided he doesn't go very deep here, which currently looks a little unlikely, then he's gonna have a lot of time to get to Basel or Vienna. Maybe there's still a chance that they're gonna give him a wild card in Basel. I think it's possible with the fact that he was the champion last year. But this just sort of screams. I don't even know what, because for one thing, he could have just missed the sign up. Like, it's possible even at this level this could happen, although he probably has a manager who takes care of that. But provided it's like the other case, I think it sort of shows that he's confused, I guess.
I think there is another possibility. There isn't another. It's only a small possibility. Is there a lingering physical issue? And you'll say, well, why is he signed up for the next tournament in Asia? But if it's a lingering physical issue that needs an operation, potentially.
Oh, okay. If he had something lined up, that would exclude him from playing that week.
Small possibility.
Okay. You're right. It could be.
He has been having knee issues on and off since Miami.
Yeah, I have no clue what he's redoing, and I already said it about Laver Cup, but honestly, if I was Felix Auger-Aliassime, I would miss Laver Cup, play Chengdu or Zhuhai. You want to get that form back, and you're not gonna get it back playing Holger Rune in the opening round of a Beijing ATP 500. Obviously, it was a possibility that he wins it, because Rune could have been ailing himself. But yeah, I just feel like this was not really a good decision to sort of play, a more of an exhibition like format. Just start competing in the smaller events a little bit. But I don't know. Maybe Felix is just at this stage where he sort of treats this year as ruined anyway, and he's sort of just driving, just going towards the end, and let's restart in the next season, which I kind of get. He's defending so many points, but yeah, maybe we'll learn why he isn't on the entry list for either Basel or Vienna. But that was very shocking to me.
Yeah, good point. Just having a quick look down this list of round of 16 matches. Alcaraz, of course, was in action earlier today, winning in straight sets over Hanfmann. I only saw the highlights, Vanch, but one thing that did strike me, at least from the highlights, was that the forehand was working. And I know it's something that Gil Gross, among others, suggested wasn't working so well during the North American swing. But then maybe my highlights deceived me, and the forehand wasn't as amazing. But there were some nice winners, including I think the break of serve that got him at the first set. Any thoughts on the Alcaraz level today or in general?
He had a few breakpoint yips at the start of the match, but I mean, once he broke at 4-all, I think he was fine. Like after that,
Yeah.
But obviously the test will get bigger. I mean, his section of the draw is pretty good. Musetti beat Hachinov today, but that's kind of a matchup that I think is going to be favorable for him most of the time for the slice, and also Hachinov coming off the title.
Yeah. Rudech are very on. Sorry, go on, Vonch.
Yeah, so I would I think we really know where he's at if he faces one of Rune or Sinner in the semis. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and Rudech seems easier than Musetti probably. So I would say if he gets through the second round, he should be in the semis. Really, it's realistically, and it's still like not the most, I guess, important part of the season at this point for him. But yeah, he is
if
there
he wants
for the
to get
long
to world number
haul.
one,
Oh
probably
yeah, I mean if
gonna have
if
to
he
win
does,
this
Big
one.
which
number one for this.
he might want to do. I mean, of course he wants that. It's just a question of how much he wants that. And it's still a very real possibility, 700 points.
Yeah.
Djokovic not playing until Paris, maybe until the ATP finals, we'll see. So yeah, actually there is a very good chance that he will get there.
I think Djokovic will play Paris and the ATP, and that'll be it. But yeah, Djokovic.
That's what he said so far, and then that's probably going to happen. Yeah.
And then on the other side of the draw, so Sinner and Rune, as you say, that could be either of those two will be a very tasty semi-final if they end up playing against Alcaraz. Over on the other side of the draw, we've got Medvedev, of course, who Alcaraz always wins. Checks notes. Oh, he doesn't always beat Medvedev, so that could be another rematch of interest. Medvedev, of course, winning today very, very comfortably over Tommy Paul. I mean that the scoreline took me by surprise. Did the result take you by surprise at all, Vonch?
I was surprised that it was that one-sided, but I kind of knew that he was going to win it in straight. It's like 2-1 though. I mean that's a beatdown. Like some of the games I think were a little closer, but than the score suggests. But like overall, there's just I don't really see many things Tommy Paul can really do unless he has an outrageous forehand day, which kind of seems to be like the thing with Tommy is like whenever he has a really good forehand day, he seems to play the rest of his game is like pretty elite on hard courts. Kind of all depends on the forehand.
I had to leave De Minaur Murray at 5-2, I think it was. I did. I know. I had to leave. I was literally pushing it anyway, and it was like, okay, I'll see if he can break serve here. And I think it was at deuce as well. So I don't think he had a match point on the De Minaur serve, but it was close. And there was a forehand I remember during that service game that Murray put into the net that he really shouldn't have done. It was just sort of neutral rally. But I still thought, well, whatever happens, he'll be fine. But he wasn't fine, Damien. He ended up losing, am I right, 7-5 in the third?
Yeah. I mean, it's actually quite interesting to see.
Was it tiebreak?
There was a tiebreak.
Sorry.
But yeah, I think I said it like a couple of days ago on Twitter regarding a very different player. Not an ATP Tour guy, really. But sometimes you're the choker, and sometimes you're the guy who receives the choke, and this happens even to Andy Murray. At the beginning of the year, we had this ridiculous streak when Murray was winning all these matches against Lehechka in Doha, and also of course Kokinakis, Berrettini. There was another match point saving, maybe against Sonego. That's the one I wanted to say. And on the other hand, you're also going to have matches which Murray chokes, and this really happens to everyone. And then that's in a way refreshing to see that, and sort of for people to realize that. And also it's kind of, well, I don't know, funny is the right word, but it's kind of amusing to see that Murray, even someone as good as Murray, and someone with so many achievements, can actually have an opponent who sort of gets he gets under their skin a little bit. And he clearly has a demeanor problem. Part of it is the matchup for sure. We were recently sort of reminded, because it was the Laver Cup, of when people were trying to coach him how to beat demeanor on the bench, and like Murray was sort of it was clear that he doesn't really have an idea how to play Alex. And this year they had these 2 matches on natural surfaces, on clay and on grass, that were just, and of course this one was still an improvement. But maybe these 4 previous losses to demeanor, and sort of always struggling to win points against him, that sort of started coming back at the end of the third set. His forehand also got really wobbly. And it's just interesting to see that someone can have a 5-0 head-to-head against Andy Murray, because it would seem like it's pretty much impossible. I don't know if anyone else has it, really. Maybe someone from like back in the day, but
I mean, I know that there was the comparison that Vonch addressed on Twitter, where I think it was Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic have all won 5 matches in a row against Murray, and now de Minaur joins that. I forget which media outlet it was that tweeted that, but I think they were being a little bit facetious. But Vonch was like, "Yeah, it's slightly different," which is fair enough. But I by the way, I just shared this on the screen, and I'm going to share it again. Right now, you mentioned Lehecka, you mentioned Sonigo, you mentioned Berrettini and Kokkinakis, all these amazing dramatic victories where the opponent was either up or had match points or both. Sometimes 2 sets to love, and I think a break in Kokkinakis is example. But those are all in the sandwich of 2 very painful defeats for Andy Murray, one of which I'm sharing on the screen right now from just under a year ago, when Murray was serving for the match. I think in the second set, it must have been the second set he was serving for it against Gilles Simon, and ends up going on to lose that particular encounter. And now, of course, against de Minaur. But as you say, I think de Minaur probably has his number. Any final comments on that de Minaur-Murray scenario, Vonch?
Well, what I'll say is that it's just a nightmare matchup for him, playing someone 12 years younger, who essentially is the same kind of player, counterpuncher, moves really well, relies on his anticipation, defense, court craft. So it's like Murray kind of has to outmaneuver him, playing the kind of game that he's naturally been used to, and now he has to just pretty much just step out of his comfort zone. Like, this isn't a match he would be losing in his prime, but it's just that he has a big disadvantage when it comes to this. And
I thought he was just playing a bit more aggressively yesterday, Andy Murray, and I thought that may have been.
He has to, he has to against demeanor.
He has to, and then
it was working, more or less.
Yeah,
more.
In the big moments, the forehand that he was missing,
has to come out of the comfort zone, and then the big moment comes, and there's a crack. At least sometimes,
I think there was also just a carryover effect from his frustration way too long. Because normally the difference between him and they both
You're breaking up, Monch.
I was going to say
still breaking up. But I think what he said, Damien, was that Andy Murray was shockingly bad for the last 2 or 3 games. I think that's what he said.
You managed to get that out of this? I was not able to understand.
I'm purely guessing. I think he's just going to retune. Are you okay, Vonch? Some feedback coming from or maybe
it's hard to describe it.
It's hard to describe it.
Stuttering noise.
Stuttering. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll just put Vonch on mute for a couple of seconds, and then maybe he might even rejoin us, perhaps. Oh, what have I done? I put 4. That wasn't in the script. I wasn't supposed to do that. I was supposed to do this. I've just put you on mute for a couple of seconds, Vonch. Hang on a second. Say 1, 2, 3, Vonch.
1, 2, 3.
Perfect. You're back. So you were just explaining to us about Andy Murray's unfortunate loss, anyway.
Yeah, I was just saying like the difference between him and Novak when they let out their emotions is, Novak resets really quickly. Like he'll break a racket, he'll just reset, and usually it's pretty quick. But with Andy, it kind of lingers, and I think we
Mm.
saw how that negatively can impact him yesterday because even by his standards, he was way more negative than usual, and it just started spiraling and spiraling. A lot of just throwing the rackets, just like really, really, really frustrated to where like it was like life or death. And I just think it like just took over his entire psyche. And in those big moments he got tentative, it's like he just like because for him he's tired of these moral wins. He already got a moral victory against Tsitsipas, against Fritz. He doesn't need that to feel validated. Like, oh, I'm close to these. Like he has to win because at this point it's all about winning because he's almost 37 and he doesn't really need to be doing this anymore unless he gets the wins. So it's kind of a tough situation where like he's putting so much pressure on himself, but he kind of has to because then otherwise you're kind of thinking it and you're like, what is really the point? And in a way, I think it's just probably more discouraging. This one will sting a bit more than against Dimitrov at the U.S. Open because that one you can just be like, okay, well, I wasn't really close, whatever. Like second round, I wasn't good enough. But this time he actually was good enough to win, and he had the right touch, so he did play more aggressive. But in those big moments in the match points, apart from one ace that didn't overhit, he just couldn't get over the line. So yeah, psychologically it must be difficult.
Yeah. This is not me saying it's a definite, so don't clip this and replay it back to me, Andy Murray fans. But I think that this year's Wimbledon was last chance. I think he had it. I think it's some feedback again, Vonch. I'm not sure. No, I think it's okay now. Well, if Vonch doesn't move, we're good. What it was before, by the way, it was like a popcorn sound. Actually, that's what it
Yeah,
was.
Max uses a good
That's good.
comparison there.
That
Yeah.
was how it sounded. Yeah. But anyways, it sounds fine now. At least Vonch is like put himself on mute. But we'll bring you off, or you can bring yourself off mute when I redirect this question again to you, Vonch. But in the meantime, yeah, Andy Murray for me, it was some Andy Murray fans and optimists are like, oh, but Tsitsipas played amazing. Yeah, but the draw was there for Andy, I think, to get to the second week. And really, I think it is kind of Wimbledon or bust, probably, unless we have sort of some more miracles like we saw in Melbourne, maybe at the beginning of the year. But eventually, that's not sustainable. But that doesn't mean that I think Andy Murray should be retiring or anything like that. I think you could have a great Davis Cup and maybe even win a tournament or two before his career and maybe still reach a second week of a slam. But I just wonder if that ship may well have sailed. Nicholas Jarry, by the way, unbelievable win, or should I actually? Maybe I'm getting carried away. Maybe I'm being too optimistic about Tsitsipas and too negative about Jarry by saying that. Maybe it's a predictable win, Damien. Actually,
I wouldn't go as far as say predictable, but Tsitsipas had been struggling the past few weeks. Also, like big servers generally don't match up very well against him, Jarry included. He has just only beaten him twice on grass, but it's not like that's Jarry's best surface either.
no.
Basically, he's only lost to him in like super slow Monte Carlo, Los Cabos conditions. And yeah, it was just another one of these matches where the lack of backhand, well, can you really say that? I mean, the lack of a slice, the lack of any way to like soak up the pressure of the Jarry serve, and also Jarry in the rallies as well. Jarry going to the net because that's something he also loves to do, and yeah, just approach to that Tsitsipas backhand, nothing can hurt you. That's basically it. And yeah, I just think it was another one of these matches, and it really felt like there was nothing that Tsitsipas could do on the match point, by the way, which I know people pointed out on Twitter, and that was pretty insane. I think it really serves as a wrong image of the entire match, because in that match point, in that very point, Tsitsipas hits like a few defensive slices that are actually pretty decent. And that was not the case the whole match.
Okay.
And of course, especially glaring is that like whenever there's a pressure point on the Jarry serve, he can just slam a serve into that Tsitsipas backhand, and most of the time it's not going to work out. I think one of the breaks, there was a block return that he missed, classic. But there was also one break point on the Jarry serve that Tsitsipas will really regret, because he actually had to hit a second serve return, and he managed to run around it and hit with the forehand. So exactly what he wants to do. But yeah, anyway, just another one of these matches where a big server comes in, plays Tsitsipas, and the backhand does not hold up. especially as the courts seem to be pretty quick as well in Beijing.
Even those slices you mentioned, yeah, they had good depth, but
Yeah.
but what you also want from a slice is a nice low net clearance with a nice low bounce, and they didn't. Maybe they're never going to have that. Maybe and yeah, I know what
But
you
if he
mean. They
played
weren't
his slice like this, if he played this slice like this, it would be like a completely fine shot. It wouldn't
sure.
be an issue, and it will actually give him some sort of a way to reset points
Yeah.
from that wing, which he doesn't have. But yeah, the match point, he was actually okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a good match point, a very good one, and I've seen it on Twitter a couple of times already. But good win there for Jari as well, who I think is having a pretty good year. Anything else? Rublev, Rublev, Norrie. 3 sets, Norrie winning the first set, to my surprise, actually, but ultimately Rublev proving too strong. Evans, who did he play? Yannick Sinner. No. Who did he play? Yannick Sinner, right? And that was 3 sets too, I think. Am I right on that? Evans maybe winning the first as well?
Yes, I think it was maybe the second that Evans won. Sinner fell or something like that. I didn't watch it, but
Yes, there's been a bit of controversy about
yeah, he was struggling
Evans
quite a lot.
mimicking Sinner's injury, and apparently he's also done that before, which is rather unfortunate or unsavory. Keane, by the way, also talking about Casper's chances of winning another ATP title, not on clay. I don't think that's the biggest shout of all time, Keane. I don't know how many tournaments Keane that Casper has won off clay. I would suggest
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that, and I couldn't remember a single one. But apparently, Vanch will remember what he won on
go on. What's Casper
off
run
clay.
off clay, Vanch?
2021.
San Diego, yeah, that's why I said that Vanch will
Oh,
remember.
okay, you won San Diego. Okay, good one.
Yeah.
I would have never remembered that. I mean, right now,
No.
when just looking at who he played in the final, yeah, sure, I remember some matches from that event, but no, I would have never guessed it. And actually, I was struggling to come up with it. But yeah, he has just won.
Keane is also mentioning Ayeni because that I think is the player that has mentioned on Twitter today that Dan Evans has form regarding this sort of mimicking a limp.
I actually know Ayeni really well because we went to the same high school. So.
Oh, do you? You and Ayeni went to the same high school?
Yeah.
Nice guy?
Yeah. He actually used to. I don't remember him being in school very often because he was always traveling and playing tournaments.
Yeah.
All across the country, all across the world, basically. But he was.
For example, Aptos 2018.
Yeah, he was playing doubles with Tsitsipas a lot, and now he goes to the University of Kentucky and he's gone for a master's degree and still was a pretty decent player. Like he still.
I think he's finished it, right? Because he only went there for the 5th year.
Yeah. Oh, before that, I forget where he went before this, but
Cornell.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I know
Kentucky for the 5th year. Yeah,
I know he's a professional tennis player, but when Vonch began that little thing by saying, "Well, I didn't see him much at school. He wasn't there very often," I started to think about people that I went to school with and I didn't see them there very often. But it wasn't because they were playing professional tennis. And I thought, okay, here we go. We're gonna.
I think for some people I was that sort of person as well, and that was not because I played tennis professionally.
Right. My worst moment was sort of 16 to 18. In that, it's actually by law, of course, you have to go to school before 16. I don't know how loose or strict they are in Poland, but yeah,
same
16,
I think. Yeah,
16 to 18 was more optional, but still, there is an
that's
obligation.
the exact same system here.
Yeah. But I wasn't always present at that age. But anyway, that's a different topic. That's not tennis related. Let's stick to the tennis. Are there any more talking points, Vonch, from the? I mean, you could mention Astana as well if there's anything in Astana.
Yes, go to Astana.
I will come to you in a second for Astana, Damien. So if there's anything else more from Beijing, or even earlier this week with Zverev winning that title, or any other men's stories this week, Vonch?
In terms of Beijing,
I think we covered it. I saw Humbert on the list. I have no idea who he beat to get there, I have to say.
Yeah, I think he's going to play Rublev again. So that would be interesting, I guess. I mean, there's this one point that Jabeur was like 7-5 against top 10, but I know he's lost his last three. So we'll see. I mean, he had this thing going where he was just peaking against the very best and then kind of not so much against the rest.
Keen, I do hope you've seen the doubles review that I did with the doubles guys regarding the US Open. But I have to say, I tell you what, Keen, I'll consider it when you spell Astana right. Okay, Keen, that's I'll consider it at that point. In the meantime, Damien,
Actually,
I think
one thing that I realized, well, this is related to Andy Murray. I feel like most of his chokes, if you want to call it that, like or matches he should have won, have come with the Paris Masters. Because you mentioned the one against Simone, but there's also the one against Kepfer in the 2021 match, where I think he had 7 match points. And then there's also the Jerzy Janowicz one, where he had a match point in 2012. And then, yeah, that was weird because I'm randomly now remembering he had match points in 3 consecutive tournaments after the US Open against the Raonic in Tokyo, and then obviously the Djokovic one in Shanghai, where he had those 5 championship points.
And then on the other hand, you have 5 match points against Tommy Robredo, and then 5 match points against Tommy Robredo again, also towards the end of the year.
Yeah, these things just happen in bunches with him. It's interesting.
Astana, Damien, what can you tell us?
I'm honestly surprised why Keen wants us to mention the Astana doubles so much, because I'm looking at this draw and I'm like,
I don't think he does. I don't know. I think there was something about he wanted me to say something about Dan Evans as well earlier, and I get it. It does seem a bit unsavory what Dan did, but I think he's having a laugh. I think he's probably had a couple of drinks as well, but that's purely a guess because of that people
Friday night, possibly.
And Keen, by the way, normally I would have a few beers, but I'm going to do it tomorrow, so I'm going to keep them powder dry tonight. There's another Polish message as well coming in for you, Damien.
He says my spelling is better in Polish. And anyway, when it comes to the singles in Astana, I am definitely extremely excited by Medvedev getting to the quarters again after Ekstad. Of course, he's
just going to ask me, is he going to win the title?
Lehečka is a pretty tough quarterfinal opponent, but after that, I think it would really open up. And also, this is basically the first time that we've seen a run of this sort of quality for Medvedev outside of clay, I would say. I mean, he qualified for Wimbledon, but then lost to O'Connell. And like he's won a challenger on hard before. Actually, he's basically on a 7-match winning streak right now because of that challenger. But it was always like a bit of an assumption that at some point, despite the sloppy footwork, he's gonna, like, the weaponry is just gonna be too much. He's gonna be great on hard as well. And I think this Astana court, which is like slow but still indoors and also actually quite low bouncing, I think it's really good for him. And maybe not necessarily the low bounce, but the slow but indoor combination. And yeah, I think he has an actual real shot at winning the title if he can beat Lehečka, which would be very exciting. Still possibly a top 100 breakout this year. And I really want him to get to the top 100 this year because he was one of these like very bold picks of mine, in terms of getting to the top 100. Like these guys where everyone was like, no, definitely not in 2023 yet. So I really want to be right with this one. So Hamad, you've got like 2 months left, so please do it. It could be with a title in Astana. As a matter of fact, I think it would also be possible with a final in Astana.
Cool. Fingers crossed.
Do you think Djokovic will keep on funding his career? Let's say he gets all the way to 50, 40.
Yeah.
Is he going to be like, I helped you enough, I'm good now?
At some point, it's possible that, it's not going to make sense, right? Because he's just going to have enough money by himself. He's also, in Astana, he's with Troicki, who's also like one of the, I don't know, is he one of the coaches in the Djokovic Academy? I would think so, right? So I don't know how exactly that works at this point, but yeah, I would assume that if he's like in the top 20, then there's no point in financing him anymore, right? But obviously, I don't know how much Djokovic actually he definitely had to know of Hamad and had to know his game. But yeah, that was a very good pick, obviously. I think from maybe when he was still playing juniors and getting these Belgrade wildcards or something, it was clear that he and Topo have a lot of potential. But then you have Topo right now, you have Medvedev right now. So Well, Topo went to play for Germany, of course, like in the past couple of years, but like, yeah, still Djokovic made a very good call with that, I think.
I think there's one story, but it's a very, very, very brief story. But it is to just say that Karolina Pliskova has ended her tennis season today. I can't remember the exact reason. Was it a wrist injury?
Wrist, because someone was comparing it to Zizou breaks on my timeline. I'm not sure what the exact argument was, but I think he was like maybe even annoyed at the fact that Pliskova is ending her season, whereas Zizou, when he had an injured wrist, he kept playing without a backhand, basically slicing only. So I guess someone just didn't really get that, wrist injuries and injuries in general are very individual.
They are, but there does seem to be a hot topic in tennis at the moment. Obviously, with Zizou Bergs, and I remember, I think both Tsitsipas and maybe Medvedev have mentioned it earlier this season. Unusual for them to be on the same page about anything, but maybe they are on this one. But yes, so there we go. So it does seem to be a hot topic and one that we can revisit. But as a person who's never played professional tennis, it's quite difficult for me to explain. But there was something I think from Bergs as well about playing different balls at different tournaments. But I don't think that's ever going to change, just because too many dollar signs and too many sponsorship agreements and all the rest of it, and too many competitors. I don't see it being a situation like in Formula One or something like that, where all the teams will wear the.
It could, if like the whole tour had one ball, right? If there was just, I don't know, the ATP Tour signs a contract with one manufacturer. Maybe that's possible, but I don't know. Yeah, as you said, I mean, I think right now it's sort of more individual for the tournaments, and probably some have contracts until 2027 and some have until 2032. So how do you even this out? Yeah, it's rough. But in the ideal world, I would love that. Yeah, just the same ball every week. Why are we changing that?
Yeah, right. All right, guys. I will let you guys get back to your afternoons in California and post midnights in deepest, darkest Poland. Yeah. I just got a message from Nick Carter. Sorry, I just got distracted by that. Anyway, also the net message from Nick Carter says, we won't have a Tokyo champion until Sunday. No, we will have one tomorrow. The finals Oh, sugar! No, it's the semi-finals tomorrow.
Yeah.
Good of me to end on a mistake anyway, given how confused I was at the beginning of the show.
Ningbo final on Saturday, right?
Yeah,
Beijing
on Saturday. Yeah,
Tokyo on Sunday. Yeah, right now I confused Beijing with Tokyo. Yeah, let's just wrap it up.
Yeah, Nick 1, John 0. Guys, Vansh, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
And a big Chenkuya as well. Damien, I don't know how my Polish accent was there. It might even been a Japanese accent.
I don't know. Honestly, I cannot really judge it. I mean, Dziękuję is how I would say it, or Dzięki for short. Is probably
Dzięki. Is that like
yeah, Dzięki.
I bet
it's like thanks, right? I mean, it's like thank you, thanks. I mean,
cheers. Yeah, that's what I mean. Then you sort of become more hip and cool. And,
yeah,
he speaks Polish really well. Wow.
No,
and then you just go,
possibly, yeah. But yeah, again, thank you guys, and thanks to people in the chat as well.
Cool. And Tennis World, you know the drill. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.